There is a place deep in the Pacific where time forgot to move, where the jungle grew thick around old wounds, and the cries of a war long over still echoed through the trees. A place where one man refused to believe that peace had arrived. This is the story of the island that refused to surrender. It begins in December 1944. The Second World War is burning its final months. The Japanese Empire is retreating, but in the Philippines, the fighting is brutal. On the small island of Lubang, a young intelligence officer named Hiro Onoda is sent on a mission. His orders are clear: defend the island, sabotage the enemy, and under no circumstance, surrender. When the Allied forces invaded a few months later, Japan's defense collapsed. The war was ending everywhere, except here, because Onoda and 3 of his men refused to believe it. In August 1945, Japan surrendered. Cities lay in ruins. The emperor's voice echoed through radios, announcing the end of the war. But in the dense jungle of Lubang, there were no radios. Only leaflets dropped from planes, paper falling from the sky, declaring that the war was over. Onoda read them, studied them, and said to his men, "This is enemy propaganda. They're trying to trick us." And so, the men vanished deeper into the trees. Imagine that. The rest of the world rebuilding, mourning, moving on, while these few soldiers believed they were still at war. For years, they lived like ghosts. They stole rice from villages, hunted cows, and built makeshift huts covered in palm leaves. Every sound from the forest was suspect. Every stranger could be an enemy spy. The jungle became their battlefield, their home, their cage. They waited for reinforcements that would never come. They fought for a country that no longer existed, and they clung to an order that time had already erased. One by one, Onoda's men began to disappear. Some surrendered, others were killed. By 1949, Onoda was alone, a single soldier holding his post hidden beneath the canopy of Lubang. He repaired his old rifle, polished his boots, and patrolled the jungle as if the war were still raging beyond the trees. For him, surrender wasn't just unthinkable, it was impossible. He had been trained to believe that surrender was shame, worse than death, and so he chose duty over truth. Decades passed. Planes flew overhead, now commercial jets, not bombers. Villagers' children grew up fearing the phantom soldier who attacked livestock and raided their fields. Posters were printed, broadcasts made, search parties sent. Japan sent newspapers, family photographs, even letters from Onoda's own brother, all dropped into the jungle. He examined every one of them and declared, "These are fakes. The Americans are clever." It wasn't stubbornness. It was faith twisted by isolation. He was a man so loyal that he stopped believing in reality itself. By the 1970s, the story of the Japanese soldier still fighting World War II became a legend. People whispered about him, the man who refused to surrender. Reporters called him the soldier of another time. Then, in 1974, 29 years after the war ended, a young Japanese traveler named Norio Suzuki ventured into the jungle to find him. He wasn't a soldier, he was just a curious explorer searching for 3 things: Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman, he said. Amazingly, he found the first one. When Suzuki met Onoda, he spoke to him kindly, told him that the war had ended, but Onoda shook his head. He said he would not surrender unless his commanding officer personally came and gave the order. And so Japan did something extraordinary. They found Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, Onoda's former commander, now an old man running a bookstore. They flew him to Lubang Island. On March 9th, 1974, he walked into the jungle, wearing his old uniform, and found his lost soldier. Standing before him, Onoda saluted. The major read aloud the formal order. All combat activities are to cease immediately. For the first time in nearly 39 years, Onoda lowered his rifle. He stepped out of the jungle. The war finally over. When he returned to Japan, the world felt alien. Tokyo was filled with skyscrapers, neon lights, cars, televisions. He had left a nation at war. He came back to one reborn in peace. Reporters swarmed him, calling him a hero. Some saw him as a symbol of loyalty. Others called him a fool, a man who killed civilians long after the war's end. Onoda refused the back pay offered to him, saying that he had done nothing special, only his duty. He later moved to Brazil to live a quiet life on a cattle ranch. Years later, he returned to Japan, where he opened a nature school for young people, teaching survival, endurance, and self-discipline. But the island never forgot him. For decades, villagers had lived in fear of his raids. People had died. For them, Onoda's war was not heroic, it was horror. It's easy to romanticize his story, a man so loyal that he outlasted his war. But it's also a reminder of how blind faith can imprison us, how the human mind, once set on a purpose, can become a world of its own. In interviews years later, Onoda said something haunting. Every man should have something he will not surrender, but mine was too much. His words feel like a confession and a warning, because Onoda's story isn't really about war. It's about conviction, about how far someone will go when their reality collapses, and what it means to live in a world that has moved on without you. In 2014, at the age of 91, Hiro Onoda passed away, the last soldier of a vanished empire, and with him, the final echo of a war that refused to end. Today, if you walk through the jungles of Lubang, you'll find the faint remains of his camps, rusted cans, a handmade stove, pieces of uniform slowly returning to the earth. The island has reclaimed him, as time reclaims us all. His story asks one simple, impossible question. When the world tells you it's time to let go, how long will you keep fighting? Because sometimes surrender isn't about defeat. It's about the courage to believe in something new. And in the end, that may be the hardest victory of all.